Hello again, and welcome to a Financial Thought Leadership podcast sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast was meant for those working at a credit union or a community bank and want to hear from peers on how they are doing great work around the nation. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and stay tuned for a great show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I am joined by Amy Downs, CEO of Allegiance Credit Union. We've had her on the show before. If you remember, her episode was one of my favorites. It was about throat punching people that were in sales. Amy, welcome back to the show. So excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, we are stoked to have you. You've been an incredible guest before, and I'm excited to talk about this topic today. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of cohesive leadership. So I want to talk about that in just a second, but before I do, I want to ask you a quick question. Explain to the audience so they can get to know you on a personal level. What is your perfect day outside of work?
Oh, my perfect day outside of work. It begins with getting ready for a long distance bicycle ride. So a perfect day for me actually is going to occur about a week from now. I will be riding my bike across the state of Oklahoma. So I will be getting up every morning super early and pedaling about anywhere from 50 to 60 miles a day.
Wow, that's some intense stuff.
I love it. It's fun. Hey, when you are worried about like trying to ride your bike that many miles, you don't have time to worry about all the other stuff we worry about, right? You still have time. You're worried about getting water, not dehydrating. Where's the next rest stop? Can I make it up this hill? You don't have time to worry about all the other stuff.
So, we haven't talked about this yet, but you're also a recent author. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Your book is called Hope is a Verb. Tell us what inspired you to write it and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's been a book in the works for probably about 10 years. And it came up because I kept being asked questions whenever I would speak. And people started asking, do you have a book? And there was just, the older I got, the more my journey, I felt like had lessons or things that other people could maybe, it could encourage them. So I put it together wanting to be an encouragement to other people in their journeys. Here's this thing I went through that was really terrible. And here's how, I'm over here on the other side, I'm doing well. And whatever you're going through, you're going to make it through too. It was meant to be something that would encourage people.
And how did the credit union world, how did they get involved? Because the book is about the Oklahoma City bombing. Right. And talk to us about how the credit union world got involved there, because I love to hear about this.
So basically, when I started working on this book, I was collaborating with my nephew, who's a writer. And I told him, I was like, this book, we have to weave in a commercial for credit unions. Like, I don't know how we do it, but we've got to weave in this thing about credit unions. So we tell the story about my very first job interview for a credit union, which was the credit union that was in the Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. And the only literary license that we took in this book, which means you're kind of deviating from exactly what happened, was I put in the interview that I asked the question, now what is a credit union? Because I wanted the opportunity for the reader who may not know what a credit union is to learn what a credit union was. Now, I did in fact ask that question. It just wasn't in that exact interview. It was in a different one. So I went on throughout the book to weave in the story of the credit union because our credit union was in the bombing and we lost 18 of our 33 employees. So from that moment, walking through that period with our members and our employees, I don't know sometimes where my personal life ends and work begins. It's so integrated. So there was no way to tell my story. There was no way to tell about my journey, my transformation without including the credit union because it's so much a part of me.
Love it. One of the things that I think is really important is understanding sort of a little bit of your background and your journey as we talk about this leadership topic. So how did you come to work for a CU?
So it's kind of an interesting story. I in 1989, okay, that was a decade of like amazing rock music and hair. So I had really amazing big hair. And that was the only great thing I had going for me. I had just flunked out of college because I could not pass the remedial math class. And I thought with those amazing math skills that I would, I needed a fresh start. I was going to go to work for this credit union, give me a cash drawer, what could go wrong there? And so I'm in the interview with, for this teller position, and the CEO walks in during the interview and asks me, hey, when is your birthday? Which of course, you're not supposed to ask when your birthday is, but she asked when my birthday is. And I said, March 31st. And she goes, oh, you're an Aries. And she looks at the person interviewing me and she says, you know what? We need another Aries. You need to hire her. So thank God my qualifications for my job was my horoscope and not my, grade point average. So that's actually how I got my job. I was such a bad teller. Now I was great, at talking to the members and being friendly, but balancing the cash drawer was a different story. And one time the guy who ran the snack bar upstairs, he was blind. He came in, he asked for a pack of $1 bills. I gave him a pack of $100 bills. He came back to my window. Thank God somebody told him because he was blind. He didn't know. So an honest person told him those were hundreds. He came back to my teller window, leaned into my teller window and whispered to me so nobody else would hear, I think you gave me the wrong money, and pushed the pack toward me. Oh my word. The day I became CEO, so fast forward, I did become CEO. I did go back and get my degree and my master's. So I could probably balance a cash drawer now, I think. But I called the guy that did this. I called him the day I became CEO and I thanked him for my job because had he not done that, I probably wouldn't still be here.
So let's talk about some of those learning moments, because I think that's ultimately what creates sort of just an innate part of who you are as a leader. How did those experiences, and in that one in particular, grow you into the CEO that you are today?
Well, something that I learned, and it was a combination of my experiences, but a combination of following really, really great business leaders like Patrick Lencioni, and really continuing to have a growth mindset to understand and to learn. What I've learned is we're not all wired exactly the same. And so while somebody might look at me and think, well, gosh, you're like, can't balance a cash drawer, like what's wrong with you? On the other hand, I am very strong in ideation and very strong in vision. So it takes all of us. No one is perfect. So we need people on our team who, have the gift of details, and following something through to the end. We need people who have the gift of rallying others around the idea, coming up with the idea. We need people on our team who know how to discern whether it's a good idea or not. So I've just learned that it takes all different types of people to come together to really create an amazing team. You don't want everyone thinking exactly the way you do. That's not good. You will end up with blind spots.
Yes, this Working Genius, I think, is his newest book that he's coming out with. I'm excited about that one. It's going to be good.
That's actually what we use, is the Working Genius at my credit union. And so we have all taken that test and we know what our strengths are and we know what our frustrations are. And as a team, that has strengthened us because, like, for example, our IT guy has the strength of discernment and of wonder. Now I have the strength of ideation. So I can generate ideas all day long. They may not be good. And that's where, a lot of times at credit unions, we go straight from ideation to implementation. And we skip that middle part of making sure it's a good idea, and so we bring him, even though he's in IT, it doesn't matter. The idea might not have anything to do with IT, but he's able to discern and ask the right questions to help us as a team determine if it's a good idea and build on it, make it better.
Love it. I mean, you've kind of defined a little bit, because one of my questions was going to be, let's define what a cohesive leadership team looks like. Give us some more examples of how your team operates and just the autonomy that exists there, right? I think that's so good.
Yeah. So, and this is did not happen overnight. So this has required a great deal of work. We actually hired an organizational health coach to help us through this. And we have reached a level of trust that we actually are honest with each other about that dark side of our personality, right? Because the thing that is maybe a positive when taken to excess can also become a negative. So we all have those. And we have sat around a room and shared with each other, okay, here's the thing. Like, here's the thing that drives us crazy, right? So we each know what that thing is. And it is very freeing. It is so freeing to know, you know what? They know my dark side. And you know what? They still have my back and they still respect me and they still want me on the team, and vice versa. So we've even joked, I passed out little red flags and I'm like, okay, when I'm doing that thing, somebody waved the red flag. Another one of my team members is like, my code is like, pull the ear, because a lot of times in the moment, you don't know you're doing that thing that drives your team crazy. So that is one thing that I think really makes our team work well, is that we are very honest with each other. There's not third party talk after the meeting behind doors. We do it straight to each other's face, like, hey, we don't need your ideation right now. Like, we're already ready to land the plane, like, pipe down over there. And, so it's a very, it's not necessarily that I lead out of complete consensus, or, it's not like we all take a vote and the vote wins, but we do battle out the ideas and hear and learn from each other before we move forward.
So a big challenge that people are going to have with that is egos. How do you manage the egos and have everybody leave them at the door so that you can create that type of atmosphere?
Right. So once you get to a place to where the team actually owns everything, losing the ego is good, because when something goes bad, the flip side of ego is when something goes bad, it's your fault and you're a failure, right? But if it's a team situation, it doesn't work that way. It's like, the team, we did this thing. We all thought it was good. We battled it out. We argued it. We decided to do the thing and it didn't work. So now it's not personal. It's not like, James, that idea, that thing you did, it failed. It's not that. It's, we sit around and go, oh, this isn't working. How do we readjust? We all own it. And so now it's not a negative. The flip side is true too. There's not like a single rock star that like, oh, it's something where we all share it. And it was a dramatic change, because I can remember back in the day, like, if I'm going to pick on my IT guy again, like, so IT guy starts maybe poking holes at something I'm doing in operations when I was the chief operations officer, in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, stay in your own backyard, like, pipe down. Like, why are you getting in my business? Like, you need to back over here. Well, that's not the right approach. If you want to remove silos, you need to invite those other people to have input. And it's not your own backyard. It's our credit union. It's our backyard.
I think that's beautifully put, because I think that's a big struggle. I know that just about every leadership position I've ever been in, that's something that, you get almost defensive about your own area.
And it's very difficult if you're the CEO. And I threw out an idea the other day and the team's not liking it. And they're like, I don't think we should spend the money on that. I don't think that's the wisest thing right now. So I have a choice. Do I move ahead, even though they don't like it? And it's like, well, this isn't a big thing. It's not like it's going to change the course of the credit union. Or do I win them over? Maybe that means I need, it's one thing to convince a board. It's another thing to convince your own executive team. Yeah. And I love that pressure's there. It keeps me from running off the rails or going the wrong direction, because I now need to influence them and not just say, I'm the CEO and I said it and you do it. I actually have to influence them, which means providing logic and reason and truly putting forth a good case.
So talk to us a little bit more about some of the successful outcomes that you've had with having this cohesiveness. You actually mentioned this when we had talked before. It's almost like you're creating consensus, which I think that's actually a good way to look at it. there is consensus. And I think that it's important to, when you're breaking down those silos, to have people there that have an outside perspective. Because, oh man, it happens all the time. We always get rose-colored glasses when we're looking at our own stuff. We oftentimes think it's much better than it really is. So talk to us a little bit more of those success outcomes that have happened within your own team.
So one of the success outcomes would be choosing our next core. I had an outside consultant and I had 2 other CEOs tell me, do not turn that decision over to a team. Whatever you do, that's your decision. Like, you need to make that decision. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I do want a team involved. Now, it's not going to be a vote, right? I have the right to veto something. If I think we're getting ready to harm the credit union, I'm going to step in. I'm going to, say what I need to say. But I let the team actually get involved, go do the site visits. They're the ones involved, all the layers down in the credit union. And it was really funny because I knew who I thought was the right decision. And I kept my mouth shut. I didn't do any, parking lot conversation or, setting it up. I just kept my mouth shut. They went through the whole process. And at the end of a year, they chose the same one I would have chosen. And yeah, we could have saved money on site visits. We could have saved some time. But look at what we have. We have all the layers throughout the organization aligned. They had their say, they had their input. It's totally different than a CEO going to a conference, hearing some other CEO say, this course great, coming back and telling everybody, hey, here's what we're going to do. Now I've got buy-in from the whole organization they're excited about moving forward for a core conversion,
I mean, you can't supplement that value. That's the thing. It's like, oftentimes we try to think that the quickest path to least resistance is the best option. And it actually, that's not always true.
No,
so I love the fact you went against the grain there.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. As a leader, it is easier to lead in the short term. It's easier to lead old school because that's where you lead out of fear and intimidation. Like, I'm the boss. I said it, you do it. So the person's going to do it, right? It's faster, quicker, easier. It's a longer process when I have to convince my team that it's the right thing to do. Absolutely. But if I convince my team it's the right thing to do and they believe it, they see it, they're on board, that's totally different than somebody to my face doing it. But then behind my back, maybe they're working to sabotage it, or they're not really 100% bought in because, they're not part of the process.
So, Amy, what are like, I don't know, top 1 to 3 ideas that credit unions could do today to start building this type of culture?
So one, I think reading the book, The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni is a huge start because he really sets up a lot of this model in the book. 2, unfortunately, it really has to be a top-down thing to really be effective. So you've got to make sure that the CEO, the person at the top, really does buy into this type of structure. Hiring an organizational coach for us was the game changer. That really took it to a whole nother level once we had an outside organizational coach to guide us through difficult conversations. Because at first, when that trust is not really quite high, you're vulnerable, like it could go off the rails, and having that person who's experienced in leading you through that was key to me.
How did you find the coach?
So actually it was on LinkedIn. So I was liking something, a Patrick Lencioni post, and he actually has certified, he's got like a certified coaching program, like called CABA Pro or something like that. And one of the coaches commented on something, like we both were commenting on something on LinkedIn and struck up a conversation. And again, to my point from that previous throat punch thing, if you want to be a good salesperson, be engaged and be involved, whether that's on social, whether that's at a physical conference, whatever. And this coach wasn't trying to sell me. We were having some great dialogue and then went offline with the dialogue. And it actually was me asking her, hey, do you ever do this? Like it was the opposite. I'm now asking her, sell me. She didn't do do you have 15 minutes to jump on a quick call? We didn't have that kind of exchange. Right. And so, she ended up getting the business,
I think that's great. Amy, we're at time. Where can people reach you? And if they want, especially if they want to know about more, like they want to pick your brain more on this cohesive leadership idea.
Absolutely. So probably the easiest is amydowns.org. It's my website, and it's got my social links and everything, and also information on the book if anybody's interested in that.
Love it. Again, Amy just wrote a book called Hope is a Verb. It's actually right here, by the way. I had it. So
I'll look at that product placement. Woo!
It is. So take a look at her book. It's great. I'm almost finished with it. She's got some really, really cool stories in there that will actually just blow your mind. So Amy, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
You were, again, amazing as always.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful day.
You too.